So hi, everyone, and welcome to our live info sessions. I'm Robin Rothenberg, and with me I have Melissa Campagnolo and Llewellyn Arden, who have been longtime students and now mentors and colleagues of mine for many, many years. And they're here to share their perspectives as both graduates of, I think, all the programs, and then mentors for all the programs. So they have a nice mixed perspective on that. And so you can, if you have questions, you can bring those forward for them. Also, Liz is here, and Liz also took the ELBP, the essential low back training, the last time I offered it, which was in Orlando in 2020, in January of 2020. And then I flew home, and that was the end of that, right? So, and she can maybe share some about her experience and why she's actually interested in doing it yet again. So let me just again welcome those of you that are joining us live, and then any of you who will be picking this up later. Thank you for your interest. This program, it's like with your kids, you don't want to have your face, or at least admit to your face. But this program is very near and dear to my heart because it really, it was based on a very significant research study that was done back in 2000 that I was blessed to be asked to be the co-creator of the protocol and the person who taught the classes. And it was funded by National Institutes of Health. They were looking for, was to really test out, was yoga therapy a useful way of addressing low back pain? There had certainly been a lot of ideas and anecdotal stories put out there saying yoga is good for the lower back, but they wanted to have some proof of that. This was the very first landmark, there's a landmark study, it's the very first randomized control trial done on yoga, period. And the results were so, on any topic of yoga, it was the very first one. And it was so effective that it was published in the Annals of Internal Medicine in 2005, which there were no previous studies on yoga that held up to the scientific rigor that's required of a major medical journal to be published in that. So we were all, I don't mean just we, like those of us involved in this study, but the world of yoga therapy was pretty ecstatic about this because it really put us on the map with mainstream medicine, saying yoga is effective therapeutically. At least in this vein, we can show it really, there's marked results that are significant. So in the wake of that, one of the problems with the study was, the only way I can say it is that my fingerprints were all over it. I basically wrote the protocol with the support and supervision of my teacher at the time, Gary Kraftsow, and we finessed it together, and then I taught the classes. So every part of it had me in it. So in essence, they had to X me out of the equation. So we took the same protocol. It was a 12-week series, 2 weeks with each of the practices. So they'd be introduced to a practice, they'd go home and practice for a week, they'd come back and practice that same practice again, refine it, ask questions, and then move on to something a little bit different, right? And then practice that for 2 weeks. All right, so we were very methodical about it. They had handouts as well as audio recordings, so they could use either the handouts or the audio or a combination of both, depending on how they like to practice. And so we took that same process, but this time I taught other teachers how to teach it, and then they taught it. So the results from the first study were that 78% of the people found decrease in pain, increase in quality of life, significantly so. And the second study was, there were 63% that had those results. So a couple of things I want to point out to you about that. Any other process that has been scientifically studied to address lower back pain, whether it's massage or chiropractic, physical therapy, or any kind of traditional conservative way of approaching it, never has been shown to be significantly effective above 50%, which is placebo effect. Secondly, this study was the other parts of the randomized controlled trial was there was a PT that put together a specific 12-week, same amount of time, 12-week physical therapy practice to address low back pain. And the third piece was a very well-written book on self-care for the low back. So people were randomized into those groups. You know, it's like a coin toss. So the PT group not only wasn't as effective at the end of the process or the book, which we would expect the book because there's no interaction and no individual attention and relationship building, which we know is a very important part of therapy. But in addition, 26 weeks out, when they came back and did follow-up, the yoga people were significantly more content with their backs, still practicing, right? And still finding that there were benefits. So, I mean, to me, that's because yoga just is more, it's a full body, mindful, breath-oriented process. It's just more interesting than traditional PT, which tends to address things more on the mechanical side of it, right? Whereas with yoga, we're bringing in that mindfulness approach so people are more fully engaged in the process as opposed to, oh, I do 10 reps of this and I do 10 reps of that, right? It's that body, mind, heart, spirit thing that even when you're dealing with something like low back pain, it's all of that. So what happened for me at the end of this, and then that second study was published in the Archives of Internal Medicine in 2007. So again, this was like banner in the world of yoga and yoga therapy. So I thought, well, this is wonderful news. And I know how to teach this to students and I know how to teach this to other teachers so they can teach it to students. And I want to make this available. So I took that protocol and I put together the Essential Low Back Training Program and I started it. First year I taught it was in 2007 and up until 2020, which was the last time I taught it at least once a year, if not more than once a year in my own home studio. And then often other places would host me. I taught it at Kripalu. I taught it in Toronto. Melissa hosted me to teach it up there. So I've taught it in quite a number of different places, Santa Fe. And every time I get a full house of yoga teachers, and I will say this, and then I will step back and let my friends here speak and hear from you. But 2/3 of the people in the class, and they are a class made up of most often very seasoned yoga teachers and yoga therapists. And the first thing I ask is, how many of you have low back pain? And between 2/3 and 3/4 of the people in the room raise their hand. Every time, and I am not exaggerating. So then I pose the question, what are you practicing? And what are you teaching your students? Because National Institutes of Health have just proved that if you practice yoga correctly, it resolves low back pain. So what are you practicing that is creating low back pain and then passing on to your students? So I would like to eradicate this. I'd like your help in eradicating this. I'd like you to become more educated so that what you're offering your students, you can have confidence that you are not exacerbating a problem, but you're actually alleviating a problem, because we have the tools, we have the understanding from the yoga teachings. And if you understand functional anatomy and how to work well with your body and stabilize, then we ought not to be destabilizing our musculoskeletal system through our yoga practice. I can get on a big soapbox about that. I won't. If you come to the training, you'll hear my soapbox every day. And by the end, you'll be reciting it because It's not made up. It's not like just because I said so. It's because it's just how the body works. We have to support the body in health by understanding the body. We can't just impose a bunch of twists and more twists and more twists on our body and expect it to work. It just isn't designed to do that. But I'll say more later if you're interested. So, all right, Melissa, Llewellyn, let's start with you. What would you like to say about your experience as a student in the program, and how it supported you in your teaching? You know, what you took away from it, and how, if it's still impacting the way you teach.
I'll go first, Llewellyn, if that's okay. I really enjoyed the training, and there was something really nice about the idea of having a protocol that I can follow, that fell within kind of the Vinyasa guidelines that I'd like to think of are home for me. So that idea of always adapting for the individual was already part of what I was teaching. But to gain a better understanding of the anatomy and the techniques, was really helpful for me. Just the idea of the protocol itself. After I took the training, I taught it as a series of classes a few times and loved that. I just found that it was fantastic. It was a fantastic offering. Financially, it was really viable. And it was just really satisfying as a thing to teach, because I felt like it was helping people learn the tools to address their health issues. And I felt like we were seeing things that other people don't see. So I feel like we address things as yoga teachers, and I'm also a yoga therapist. So as a yoga therapist, we address things that physios aren't necessarily going to recognize or discuss with their clients. So I have to say I really, really enjoyed.
Thank you, Melissa. Llewellyn?
One more thing. I'm
Yeah.
also going to say, as a yoga therapist, and not only as a yoga therapist, but I teach classes at the university, and they're drop-in classes. It's so nice to have this under my belt so that when someone walks in the door with a variety of back issues, there's no question in my mind. Like, I have a real comfort in what I am offering, how I am sequencing, how I am addressing their issues, either in a therapeutic context individually or in a group context. So I feel like they have a safe place to be and a safe place to practice. Thanks, Roman.
You bet. Thank you. Llewellyn?
I took the training back, I don't know, 2017 or something like that. And I think one of the main things that made an impression on me was in the program, I was experiencing everything in my body. And the way that Robin teaches it is, of course, adapting to everybody's needs, but also learning from everyone else's, what's going on with everyone else, like in the room, and maybe like, okay, stop for a sec and let's look at this, and all the scoliosis and hypermobility and various other things that tend to come up, but also just addressing imbalance, how it's imbalanced. So it really helped me see all the different ways we can manifest low back pain. And like what Melissa said, then when, being a already existing yoga teacher at that time for many years, when anyone came into the room, I could not only know it in my body, what it felt like, and the different adaptations that were available, but also be able to recognize and be available for the students that came into the room. Because then after the program, I did, taking it myself, I set up my own, I did it in a 7-week program, and even had like a little intake form that went with it, which is encouraged, and to have an idea of who's going to come into the room and how I'm going to adapt. So that's all supported in terms of when you finally do get to the point of teaching it, after you take the program. And then the book is fantastic. Like little book here with the audio in it, and there's 5 practices, so you can set it up however you want, but with 7 weeks, it gave room to repeat, like what Robin said about how it was originally designed to repeat the practices and Q&As around what's coming up for people. And I still run into people today in my community that are like, I still do that. I love having the book and I'm still doing it. And then I have people who want to check in to meet with me as a yoga therapist. Like, I want to go over that again. So we actually go through the program again individually. And then I use it a lot in my one-on-one work, where they have something tangible to work with. And then I can also adapt the program. So that's all done in the training. You know, how to, you know, there's the anatomy and the different ways that, like I said, low back pain gets manifested in individuals. And then maybe even, you know, some of how they're working with it, you know, like a bigger, more than the physical, but how to work with the breath and how to calm the mental stuff around the pain and all of that. So that's what I love about the program. And it's been super successful for me in so many ways. So.
Thank you, Llewellyn. And I want to point out that Llewellyn is my primary assistant for this program. So in the virtual iteration, she will be assisting. You will see her, and she'll, if people have within the training are having some difficulty with their own back. I've had people who are in really acute state, and I would say 90% of when I'm saying the low back pain, and in this particular case as well, with I've had a couple of students who have a very, very hot sacrum, which is to say they've trashed their SI joint through their yoga practice. It's 100% of the problem. It's just destabilizing the pelvis by too many twists, too many hip openers, too much stretching, and not enough stabilization. That's my short note on that soapbox, which is a big soapbox for me. But Llewellyn will be there, and she'll be able to do some breakouts if people need that kind of individual attention, so that we make sure people aren't falling through the cracks. So we haven't run it this way, but we've talked about it, and we've sort of troubleshooted whatever. We've done what we can to make sure that everybody, even in the virtual setting, will be heard and seen and have an opportunity to really do healing work with their own back if needed, as needed, as well as gain the educational understanding of how to address other people's low back conditions, understanding there isn't a one size fits all. There are many different kinds of low back pain. And one of the things that I emphasize is, without going into the realm of diagnosis, which is not our scope of practice either as yoga teachers or yoga therapists, but at least having some good assessment tools to be able to navigate the waters of, well, what do you mean when you say you have your low back hurts? Where does it hurt? How does it hurt? And keywords that will give you some idea what kind of low back pain they're talking about, and then how at least to begin to initiate a practice and explore that. And then ways to know when this is outside of the scope of yoga and I need to make a referral to like an orthopedic doc and have them get an MRI or some kind of follow-up that way, because those are important parameters. There's a lot we can do. I mean, most low back pain is the result of mechanical misuse and disuse, and that's stuff that we can work with. However, there are conditions that are outside of our scope, and we need to have really clear boundaries around that and be able to go, okay. I mean, there are people that have come to see me where I'm like, I will do breathing with you, I will do visualization with you, but based on the severity of your symptoms and the way you're describing them, I'm going to suggest you go to a doctor and you get some diagnostic testing done, because my suspicion is that you have some serious nerve compression, and that's not something that I can address when you're this acute. So, and all of that information is laid out. There's a manual that you get in addition to the book. The book has audio recordings of the practices so people can listen to them as well. Your students will have the capacity to download the PDF of the book or order the book. And also once there's a promo code where they can also download the audio if they're working with you. So we have sort of an inside track for the yoga teachers that are certified in the ELBP, so their students have access to that. So that's part of what you get is basically a setup for that 7-week program. It's actually the practicum. The initial one that you teach serves as the practicum for this program that will enable you to get your CE credits from IOIT if you're a yoga therapist. If you're a yoga teacher, Yoga Alliance doesn't necessarily require practicum, but I always recommend people do the practicum because then you get the mentor feedback. Llewellyn would be acting as your mentor and we'd be reviewing what you've done. And we have evaluation forms that you give to your students, intake forms, evaluation forms that you give to your students before or after. So it really sets you up well to be successful, right? And then you get the feedback from her on how you might tweak it this way or that way based on your experience and what the students fed back. And then I have students who have taken this program who teach it, twice, 3 times a year. And as Melissa said, it's a main part of their, like their income stream. Because you know what? You know how many people, millions of people have low back pain? Millions and millions of people have low back pain. And we have something that can be really highly effective and that they can do on their own. You can teach them, and then it's like teaching them to fish. They can go and take care of themselves, which is awesome. And you know what then they do? They go tell their friends, and then their friends come and take the series from you, right? So it's good all the way around. And that's why I say, even though I don't choose favorites, I love teaching this because I stand in the material. I've seen the success of it. I've never seen anyone get worse through doing this program. Either they just don't get terrific results, right? And if they don't, it's probably because either they're not practicing, that's number one. It only works if you work it, as they say. Or they need to go, like what's going on with them is something else. It's something that requires medical attention. It's not going to be helped through movement and awareness and functional breathing and those kinds of things, which are the tools that we have. But that most of the people, what we've got is what they need. So, Liz, you want to share a little bit about your experience in Orlando and why here you are yet again?
I am again. So I have my yoga therapy certification also through Kripalu, which I think I finished it in 2019, either 18 or 19. And then I saw Robin. I had not met Robin, but I learned about her essential low back program somehow. So I researched that out and I went to her training live in Orlando in 2020. And myself, I have chronic low back pain and I have arthritis everywhere. And this program has helped me. And I have learned many tools that I teach now all the time. I teach a lot. My classes are yoga for health and wellness. So after that, why didn't I finish it? So the certification. After that 2020 training, I came home and I had a retina tear. About 2 weeks after the training, and I think it was 2 weeks. So I had that surgery and then I had another retina tear to the other side, and I had that surgery. But it was COVID. So March, COVID came and everything went online. And I did try to, I teach at our local college, yoga for health and wellness. And I actually developed low back pain yoga, but I didn't feel comfortable just teaching that online. I feel like it's to me, I prefer to teach something like this live and in person so I can see exactly what students are doing. But I did teach low back and other things. I'm also certified as a yoga for arthritis certification with Stephanie Munaz. And these are areas that help my body. And I did have a client that I actually started the protocol with, my sister, and we could be in the same room while I taught online, but I had her at the same room. And she was a person that I needed to say, you need to go see a doctor. And she had hernia. So she ended up doing a lot of PT and got strong, and she's all better now, which is great. It's something she still needs to be aware of. But I'm interested in taking this program again because I think it's really valuable. I have learned a lot from Robin. I've gone back and joined the Zoom club quite a few times. And Robin teaches, she's one of the best teachers I've ever had, teaching muscle strength and proper body mechanics and working with our nervous system and breath. So I'm interested in taking this again and actually teaching the whole protocol. I'm going to start a new section of classes towards the end of January. And I thought, a lot of people have low back pain. I'm one of them, but I have a lot of friends that have low back pain too. I just think it's a great course, and I do recommend it to people that are interested in that subject. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Liz, for sharing, and thank you for your compliments. I'm passionate about teaching. So, yeah. So let's hear from those of you who are here with us and interested in the program. Where's your interest, and what questions do you have for me or any of us here? You can just come on off mute.
Hi, this is Lori Heath. And
Hi, Lori.
Hi, could you talk a little bit about the structure of the program?
Sure.
We meet, when we meet, and
yeah,
like that.
So with the online program, it's so traditionally in person, it's a 5-day intensive, and it's intensive. We usually start at 8:30 in the morning and go till 6 o'clock at night. And the morning practice begins with a developmental practice on topic of the day. So the first day is around, the topic is hypomobility, basically work and weakness, general weakness, just basically deconditioned bodies. And so there's a developmental practice that's for the people in the room. And then we break down, we go after a little morning break, we come back and go through some basic anatomy stuff. I always weave in the fascial anatomy. Anatomy trains from Tom Myers. It's a big part of how I approach the body, and then get into functional breathing, which is a very important other piece that is kind of unique to my work and weaves very well with functional movement, including stabilization of the low back and pelvis. So so we go through that and then break down in the afternoon into more specifics around ways of addressing lower back pain from the side of the basically sedentary, weak, deconditioned spine. So that's day one. Day two is all about hypermobility and SI issues. Same idea, taking people through more of a developmental process around that with stabilization, strong for yoga teachers, yoga therapists, seasoned practitioners. But then later on, after piecing apart the anatomy, going deep into the structures of the inner core and really addressing those and working with them, and then therapeutic practice for people with very hot sacrums or destabilized sacrums, and how to work with them from the ground up, like when they're in acute pain, and then as they're starting to heal and working through that process. The third day is all about the pelvis, very complicated, how the whole pelvic girdle plays into the lower back and the sacrum, how it's all connected, weaving that in, huge developmental practice with that one. And then day four, and then I think later on, getting mixed up on my days, but then we go into lumbar disc issues, how to recognize them, how to stay safe in working with them, and when to refer for them. And then the last topic is scoliosis, which is complicated its own little thing. But we touch in on it, and at least I introduce the ideas of how I approach scoliosis. And with the background of everything that came before, people seem to be able to understand the complexity of it. I always say, people's structure, their spine, their structure is like a 5,000 piece puzzle, but scoliosis is like a 10,000 piece puzzle. So you do have to understand how to put together a puzzle first, and then the complexity that is layered in with scoliosis. So we look at that. So I try to give people, like, by the time you leave the program, you have an understanding of how to challenge yourself and work, like, where are the areas that you need to work on. And I'll say this, mostly it's strength and stabilization. That's what most yoga people need more of: less stretch, more strength. And then also how to adapt practices, how to understand, kind of recognize who's in the room, and how to adapt practice to support them based on this understanding of different ways that low back pain can be presented. So each day is very structured. Now, I've taken that and how to do it virtually. Nobody, including me, wants to or should be online from 8:30 in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. So we're doing, we're ending, I think, at 3 or 3:30, something like that. So 3 hours, a break, and then 3 hours. It'll hold to the main topics. We'll cover all the material, but what I've done is done 3 weekends. First weekend of October, first weekend of November, first weekend of December. So I've broken it up. And I think actually, what I found with online training, certainly there are downsides to it, but the upside is, as a teacher of teachers, an educator, in the intensive, it's like a big deluge of information coming in, no time for digestion and assimilation. So what I'm excited about with this iteration is we're just going to do the hypermobility basic anatomy pieces, weekend 1. You get a whole month to work with that, play with that, field questions to me and Llewellyn, right? And just not get into the rest of it, right? And then we get into the pelvic girdle and lumbar-disc stuff, right? And then we get into scoliosis. So it gives you time in between, which I think is going to actually even increase what the takeaway is on the student side. Because I've seen that in my training program, my therapist training program, where I taught in person for years and in these 10-day modules, and then breaking it down to the topics, just one a month. And then they get to just absorb that and work with that and play with that and practice with it, and then come back and get another little chunk that's digestible. So I think it'll be a really great delivery process for this training, but we'll see. Sangeeta, Danielle, Diana, welcome. Would you like to ask any questions? We have just a few more minutes before we switch over to the Restore Your Prana portion of the infos. Yeah, Diana, do you want to ask something, or you're just saying happy to be here? Okay, good. Sangeeta or Danielle, how's this sounding to you? Like what's your experience as we're sharing about the basically the origins of the program and the evolution of it?
I am just looking for another perspective, right? I just recently completed my yoga therapy training at Yoga North in Duluth, Minnesota. And so I loved
they're my sisters.
I loved your Restoring Prana work that we did. I have a lot of students that I see both like private sessions and in class, probably even more so in regular classes, that come with low back pain. And I'm just really curious about other techniques I could try, even marketing. I live in an area where like people are scared to try yoga, a little bit. And so just getting that other perspective, I think might be helpful. Because maybe I'm just failing at marketing right now, because I think the work works, right? And we just like having more is great.
It does. I can tell you that one of the big marketing tools for this program is that NIH study. because you can pull that up. You can quote from it. You can, like, it's there. Anybody can look it up. Like, it's there. And I mean, if you want, can go to my website and go to the low back section, the ELBP section, and there's a link to the study itself. It was a, very rigorous study. So that helps people who are not so, think yoga is all woo-woo. It's like, actually, not so woo-woo. And here's the published studies, both in, from the archives and the annals of internal medicine. And that will get people's attention. So, and we do talk about marketing for sure. It's important. Like, how do we get this information out there? It's great that I know all this stuff, but I'm one person. How many people with low back pain? I mean, I've worked with hundreds of them, but really it's a small, little tiny drop. Better that I teach people, better that you are out there teaching people, right? And so that it spreads and we can get people feeling better and living more fully in their lives. So yeah. And of course now, since Molly came into my world, which is one of the happiest days of my life, Molly McManus, who is one of the co-owners of Yoga North and one of my dearest friends, has taught me somatics. I don't know how I ever lived without it. So even though that wasn't in the original training, somatics, you will recognize there will be somatics in this. We will be pendiculating. I don't go through a day without pendiculation. I don't even know why anybody would want to. But anyway, just letting you know, it won't be so far away for, like for you, I think it'll be just, I go more into the nuts and bolts of anatomy, right? And the practicality, right? So I think you'll find that it fills that gap and gives you the confidence around this. That maybe
no, that's great, because I do not have a medical background. I feel like the anatomy knowledge is my weakness. Not that I can't see it, like I see things,
right,
but the actual knowledge and experience with it. My sister is also a physical therapist, so she just puts me to shame often. So I have, like high expectations there, I think a little bit, but
well, just know that I've had PTs, I've had doctors, I've had osteopaths who have taken this program, and I can tell you, I don't get nervous very often, but talking about anatomy in front of people who are experts in anatomy, and I have never taken an anatomy class in my life, although I've studied anatomy, hung out with people who really know, and I'm a good learner, and I have had them say that was like the most clear and simple explanation of how things actually work that I've ever heard. I'm going to quote you. So that kind of was like, okay, because it's like, I can't talk about all that fancy stuff. And I have students in my therapist training now, 2 of them who are PTs. And sometimes they're talking about stuff and I'm like, oh, I need to go to school. I don't know that stuff. But, we only need to know what we need to know to do our work. I'm not a PT, so I don't need to know what a PT knows. And they're taking the yoga therapy training because they want all the things that we know about body, mind, and how to address the confusions, the dukkha, the vritti, the samskaras, like they want that, and how to bring people into more of their spiritual center, because they don't learn that in PT school. And they also know that for some people, it's not just about what's happening in their core or their erectors or their psoas, right? It's the way that they're holding their fear, right? Or their anger, or whatever, and like how to address those things. So we get to talk about all of that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Diana, I see your hand.
So as a PT doing
yes.
yoga therapy, I can tell you, Danielle and anybody else, the anatomy is really not that important. We always think that what we don't know is the important piece because we always think we're missing something. So the pain science, particularly chronic pain science, really indicates that pain has nothing to do with the biomechanics. At the end of the day, it's not about the tissues. It's all the things yoga therapy is. It's all the mind, it's the nervous system, it's the breath, So don't get so hung up on that, Danielle. It's really not that relevant. The more you know, great. And of course, you do need to understand movement, not so much the anatomy, but movement and some principles of contraindications or If somebody
That's
has
right.
this condition, what do you know, that's more important than the actual, anatomy. This bone connects with this bone and the ligaments and all that. So yeah, so I hope that helps to reduce some of your concern about that.
Diana, thank you so much for saying that. Better coming from you. I've never learned origins and insertions. I've also not ever been in a situation where I thought, if I just knew that, I'd be able to help this person better. Like, right? Which is why I've never been motivated to memorize it. It's like, okay, what I really need to do is see this person and how they are in context in their life and how they move and their movement patterns, and start to address imbalances and educate them to feel more confident and more able to take care of themselves. Yeah. All right. Let's see. I have 1 more minute. Any other questions on the essential low back program before we shift over to the Restore Your Prana portion? Sangeeta, anything you want to chime in about? How's it sounding?
I'm here to learn. Hi, Robin.
Mhm.
I just want to take your time, you're moving to the prana, and I'm excited to be here. My background is I'm an internal medicine physician. I think I have chatted with you through a couple of times back and forth. And I'm very much interested. I'm here. That means that I know that yoga therapy helps, it works. And definitely chronic low back and is a basic major thing. Patients come in to the office, and I'm at loss most of the time. I do send them to physical therapy, 12 weeks. Some people get better, some people in between. And then I tell them to try alternative medicine, including acupuncture, whatever works, whatever I know I understand. But definitely I'm exploring alternative medicine, and I'm currently enrolled in 200 hours yoga teacher training. It's my beginning. I'm a very beginner. So I'm hoping that in future I'll be eligible if I want to pursue your course. I will be be able to participate in that.
Great. Wonderful.